Here's what's coming up on the program. 400 police officers deployed to prison in Ecuador following a major riot that has left 116 people dead. North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un willing to restore vital communication hotline with South Korea in a possible offer of reconciliation. Plus, hundreds of homes without power as a tornado tears through Australia's rural southeast. A warm welcome to the program. I am Amarachi Ubani. We begin in Ecuador, where 400 police officers are inside the littoral penitentiary in the port city of Guayaquil after 116 inmates were killed in a gang war. A fast fight broke out on Tuesday, and officials said the jail was back under control. Earlier today, however, neighbors said they heard explosions and gunshots.
The death toll from prison riots at one of Ecuador's largest penitentiaries has risen to over 100 people, including a number of beheadings. Scores of inmates have also been injured. The violence first erupted on Tuesday night at the Littoral Penitentiary in Guayas province, which has been the scene of bloody fights between gangs for control of the prison in recent months. It was the most deadly act of violence ever reported in Ecuador's prison system. Similar clashes took place in February and July this year in various prisons throughout the country, which also claimed over 100 lives. Dozens of people have gathered at the jail seeking information about their relatives, demanding accountability from officials responsible for the inmates' safety. A sister of an inmate described the scenes of chaos.
The inmates called us. Sister, they're killing me. Call the police. They need to enter Pavilion 5. Look at where they are. They are out here. It's my brother, not a dog.
Ecuador's President Guillermo Lasso has said the state would assist the families of the dead and injured inmates, adding that he would send additional security forces and free up funds to avoid a repeat.
Meanwhile, a 96-year-old German woman was caught hours after failing to turn up for her trial today on charges of aiding and abetting mass murder in a Nazi concentration camp during World War II. Irmgard Fuchner is accused of having contributed as an 18-year-old to the murder of 11,412 people when she was a typist at the Stutthof concentration camp between 1943 and 1945. But her trial in the far northern town of Itzehoe could not begin in her absence. A court spokesperson said her arrest warrant had been issued. They later confirmed that Fuchner had been detained and that a doctor was now assessing whether her health would allow her to be imprisoned. The next hearing is scheduled for October 19th. France's former president Nicolas Sarkozy has been handed a one-year prison term by a Paris court after being found guilty of illegal campaign financing over his failed 2012 re-election bid. The 66-year-old Sarkozy is unlikely to go to jail. He will appeal the sentence, though, a move that in effect suspends it, and the judge says he could serve the sentence at home with an electronic tag. But the second conviction this year for Sarkozy is a stunning fall from grace for the man who led France from 2007 to 2012 and retains influence among conservatives. The two convictions could force Sarkozy to play a more discreet role in the next presidential election. He had not planned to be a candidate, but as a popular figure on the right, he would be expected to support his party's candidate. Prosecutors say Sarkozy's Conservative Party spent nearly double the 22.5 billion euros allowed under electoral law on extravagant campaign rallies and then hired a friendly public relations agency to hide the cost. North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un says he is willing to restore a vital communication hotline with South Korea and a possible offer of reconciliation. Mr. Kim has also accused the U.S. of proposing talks without changing its hostile policy towards the North. Pyongyang severed the hotlines in August this year in protest against South Korea U.S. military drills. Mr. Kim's latest comments came during Pyongyang's annual parliament session. Local media reports that Kim wants to restore the communication lines by early October, but it is dependent on the attitude of the South Korean authorities and whether their relationships start to improve or continues its present state of worsening. Mr. Kim's latest comments echo those his sister made last week, where she said the North was willing to resume talks with the South if it ended its hostile policies. Joining me now is international affairs analyst Calvin Dark. He's in Washington. Calvin, great to see you. Do you think Kim Jong-un is serious about opening up the communication lines, especially as they come with conditions for relations between South Korea and the United States?
Well, I think he's serious in that if he gets what he's asking for, he'll reopen the lines. But, you know, Kim Jong-un is known for asking for things that he knows are unlikely to happen, and particularly for South Korea to change or alter its relationship with the United States. However, I do also, we have to recognize, is that the appeal of reestablishing that hotline appeals to audiences in North Korea and South Korea who want, you know, unification, who want cooperation. But I don't think it's serious in that he really thinks South Korea is going to change in its relationship with the U.S. anytime soon.
Does it appear to you then that North Korea's leader may, this offer that he has given may have been boosted by the fact that North Korea did test a number of ballistic missiles this month, causing him to think that he's now operating from a position of power against South Korea and her ally, the United States?
I think he may, whether or not he actually believes that the missile test put him in a position of more power, I'm not exactly sure, but I do know that it at least makes his audience, the people of North Korea, think that. But realistically, I don't think that. I don't want to use the word bluff because that's not quite the word when you were talking about nuclear weapons. But I do think that he is overplaying his hand, and I think he's aware of the power dynamic that hasn't really changed that much despite his tests.
Yeah, so what do you think is boosting his confidence at the moment, if it is not the nuclear weapons that he's developing? Because it is strategic that he's making this offer, having tested 3 ballistic missiles in September.
Well, we have a new administration, or a relatively new in terms of international affairs, because we're less than a year. And I do think that there are probably audiences in South Korea that realize that American politics is sometimes unpredictable. And if you see the North Korea with missiles that could potentially threaten South Korea, that could change some of the sentiment in South Korea about their safety, maybe depending on, will the U.S. be there to protect them? But I don't really think that it's a serious threat. It's a lot of bluster.
And the U.S. position for the 2 times North Korea has tested, these nuclear weapons, these ballistic missiles. The U.S. has said it is watching with keen interest what's going on in North Korea, but they don't think that this is a threat to South Korea or any other U.S. allies in the region. Now the 3rd one has been sent, and this one is peculiar because, it can be refueled while still active, meaning it can stay active for a number of years. The U.S. still keeping quiet about this. What do you think is the strategy of the U.S. government towards North Korea's nuclear armament?
Well, this is what I find most interesting. As we think back to the relationship that the U.S. had with North Korea under President Trump, and how, it was unorthodox. It was, 2 meetings, 2 summits. Trump even crossed over into the demilitarized zone. That actually put North Korea in a position of less strength, because here's the thing. He wants recognition. He wants sanctions release. He wants to be on the international stage. We tried that, and we saw we didn't get much from it. So I think the Biden administration is in a position of strength because they've said they're willing to talk, but they're not going to change any of the sanctions until denuclearization takes place. And when it comes to really, with the newer weapon systems, I think the Biden administration is doing what they need to do behind the scenes to monitor it, to make sure that we're prepared to help South Korea in the event that it does continue to progress. But I think the U.S. is in a position of strength.
So an olive branch or a Greek gift, which one do you think this is, this offer for restoration of communication lines, so that hotline, that all-important hotline between North Korea and South Korea? Which one do you think it is?
I think it was it was made to look like an olive branch, but it's definitely a Greek gift, because it would require South Korea to make itself less powerful in this situation. And South Korea is not going to change anything that it's doing with the U.S. Unless it feels that, when it still feels it's under threat by North Korea. So I think for it to be serious, got a long way to go.
Sorry, Calvin, just one final question. Do you really think North Korea is developing nuclear weapons?
I think they're trying, but I was reading a really interesting study from a couple of American think tanks here that kind of put it in perspective that, yes, they are trying. Yes, they're making progress. But if what the U.S. knows is true, they're a long way from really being a threat to change the real dynamics.
Well, Calvin, always a pleasure speaking with you. You seem to have all the other answers today. Thanks again for joining me on The World Today.
Thank you.
The European Union's foreign policy chief, JOSEP Borrell, says he believes nuclear talks with Iran would resume in a time lapse that will be acceptable for everyone. He made the comment during a press conference with the Qatari Foreign Minister, Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Al Thani, in Doha.
This is a key moment for the nuclear deal, and we continue working towards a quick resumption of the negotiation in Vienna. There also you can play an important role on pushing this negotiation to resume as soon as possible. We both know that the Iranians are ready to re-engage, to resume, but it has to be done as quickly as possible. But I've been talking with the Foreign Affairs Minister of Iran, the new Foreign Affairs Minister in Iran, and when he told me soon, I understand soon on a measure of time which is according with the request of the other members of the board of the JCPOA. As coordinator of these talks, I am convinced that the talks will resume in a time lag that will be acceptable for everybody.
We have more stories coming up on The World Today still ahead. Britain's been at the forefront of royal weddings in the last decade, but how about a royal wedding in Russia? It'll be the first time in more than a century. Stay with us. Welcome back to The World Today. The International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies have warned that Afghanistan could be facing a collapse of health services and mass hunger in the coming months. The IFRC says acute food shortages fueled by a serious drought, lack of cash and displacement, the COVID-19 pandemic and crippled health services have converged on the people of Afghanistan, with some 18 million Afghans in urgent need of humanitarian assistance. Since the Taliban took over Afghanistan on August 15, the country has been plunged into economic crisis as the nation's international assistance has been largely cut off. Billions of dollars in central bank assets have held abroad have also been frozen, which has put pressure on the banking system and prevented transactions involving US dollars.
The last time I was in Afghanistan was 20 years ago, and many of the issues that I saw then, 2000 and 2001, you would still see today in terms of difficult access to healthcare, particularly in rural areas, widespread poverty amongst much of the population, significant food insecurity amongst much of the population, especially during lean season. So financing of the health system has been cut off. This has resulted in over 2,500 health facilities no longer working. over 20,000 health staff no longer being employed, no longer being paid, many of which are not working, over 7,000 of which are women.
An investigation has been opened into two Belarus coaches who allegedly tried to force an athlete to fly home from the Tokyo Olympics. Kristina Simanouskaya said she was taken to the airport in Tokyo against her will after criticizing her coaches. The sprinter received police protection after voicing fears for her safety and was later granted asylum by Poland. The International Olympic Committee and World Athletics have now opened a formal procedure into the matter. The Athletics Integrity Unit will conduct the investigation into the two coaches who had their Olympic accreditations revoked and were removed from the Games. The UK government says 48.8 million people have been vaccinated in the UK, at least receiving their first jab, while nearly 5,000 less of the number have received both jabs. It comes as government statistics show another 36,480 cases of the infection have been recently recorded. Here's more on the situation in other parts of the world in our global update.
Global update begins in Australia, where Melbourne's COVID-19 cases have surged to record levels on Thursday. Officials are blaming illegal home gathering for the spike as a hard lockdown to combat the spread of the Delta variant nears 2 months. Authorities in Victoria, home to Melbourne, estimated nearly a third of Thursday's 1,438 new infections could be traced back to the home parties last weekend.
This is the reality that every single Victorian, including the government, faces. If people continue to visit each other in their homes, then they will bring the virus with them. They will spread the virus. And look, I don't think anyone necessarily who makes that choice thinks that they're going to be spreading the virus, but that's the reality of this thing.
Officials admitted Thursday's numbers, a large jump from the 950 cases the day before, is a significant setback in managing the flare-up as they race to vaccinate the state's 5.5 million adult population. The second civil trial and the first of a German tourist opened on Thursday, September the 30th in Vienna, where Austrian authorities stand accused of responding too slowly to the coronavirus outbreak at a ski resort of Esgil in '92. In early 2020, the outbreak at Esgil was Austria's biggest and helped spread the virus across Europe. Hundreds of Austrians were infected and thousands of foreign tourists said they were too, as the virus found a breeding ground in crowded après-ski bars at the resort, a party hotspot that branded itself the Ibiza of the Alps. North Korea disinfected a department store in Pyongyang as part of the state's antivirus measures to prevent coronavirus from spreading. In a video provided by North Korea's official news agency KCNA, employees of the Pontonggang department store were seen disinfecting facilities of grocery and restaurant, and visitors were seen using hand sanitizers at the entrance. North Korea has not reported any coronavirus cases and has imposed strict antivirus measures, including border closures and domestic travel curbs. The World Health Organization, WHO, is a possible contender for the 2021 Nobel Peace Prize Award. The WHO is an agency of the United Nations set up in 1948 to improve health globally. It has more than 7,000 people working in 150 country offices, 6 regional offices, and its Geneva headquarters. Its Director General, currently the Ethiopian Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, has been leading the fight against COVID-19 since the pandemic began.
A tornado tore through Australia's rural southeast today, ripping roofs off houses, uprooting trees, toppling power lines and causing minor injuries. Emergency services say police and ambulance crews were called to Meadow Flat, a town of 300 people about 166 kilometers from Sydney, following reports of a tornado destroying a house at about 12:30 p.m. local time. They reported a man was taken to hospital with cuts to his arm. About 20 minutes later, the crews went to Clear Creek, a population of about 100, about 30 kilometers away, where a man and a woman were treated for minor injuries. The New South Wales State Emergency Service issued a warning for people around the state to secure loose items outside their homes. The tornado upended power lines and blew part of an iron roof into electricity wires, triggering an automatic power outage for at least 164 homes.
The current indication is that we have a line of damage, roughly 25 to 30 kilometres to around the Clear Creek area, running in a northwest line.
Weather's not any better in Thailand. Floods caused by tropical storm Dianmu are still high in the northern province today. Stores and markets in Nakhon Sawan province were forced to shut down as a result. The government has reassured the public the situation is manageable and there will be no repeat of the devastating months-long flooding of 2011, which killed hundreds of people, damaged vast swathes of farmland and paralyzed Bangkok and its industrial belt. Now, ahead of the upcoming COP26 climate talks, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson says this could be the beginning of the end of climate change as the shift on the scale needed is perfectly possible. He was speaking in a video message shown at the Youth for Climate Summit taking place in Milan. Youth climate activists, including Greta Thunberg, are meeting Italy's Prime Minister and current President of the G20, Mario Draghi, in a final push to get world leaders to match rhetoric with action before the UN COP26 Climate Summit in November.
And there are four things that we want to come out of COP26, four big changes in our approach, and it's very easy to remember. It's coal, cars, cash and trees. Coal, cars, cash and trees. We want to move away, as I've described, we want to move away from using coal as the way we generate electricity. We want to move towards renewable. We want all the countries in the world to move off coal. We want everybody to stop using internal combustion engine vehicles, and it can be done. People are moving away from them as we speak. As Mario has just said in his really excellent speech, we want to raise the funds that the whole world needs, the developing world in particular, to tackle climate change. And we need to get up to $100 billion, and we need to plant hundreds of millions, if not trillions, of trees around the world.
So wedding bells are tolling in Russia as the former imperial capital plays host to the wedding of a descendant of the Russian royal family. It will be the first of such event in more than a century. Grand Duke George Mikhailovich Romanov is tying the knot with his Italian fiancée, Victoria Romanovna Batterini at St. Isaac's Cathedral in St. Petersburg in an elaborate religious ceremony with hundreds of foreign guests in attendance. Russia's last Tsar, Nicholas II, his wife and 5 children were killed by a revolutionary firing squad in July 1918 in the cellar of a merchant's house in Yekaterinburg, in a city which is 1,440 kilometers, oh my gosh, which is a city 1,450 kilometers east of Moscow. 40-year-old Duke said his choice of St. Petersburg for his wedding is because it is very, very close to the family. George Mikhailovich was born in Spain, living there and also in France. He visited Russia for the first time in 1992 and now lives in Moscow, where he works on a number of charity projects. That will be a wedding to watch. Thanks for watching, though. I'm Amarachi Ubani.